Hey everyone, welcome back to All Tommy Farms, and today we're going to be getting into a new video. And before we get into the video, please go on and click the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Let's go on and get into the video. Well, good evening. Give me just a second, folks. Let me make sure I get everything in order. Thank you all so much for joining in tonight. I appreciate y'all so much. I hope y'all can hear me. Let me know. I'm gonna change over to my regular microphone. I wasn't really switched over right when we got started. So hope y'all can see me and hear me okay. Thank you all so much for joining in tonight to another episode, a live stream of the Wildwoods Beekeeping podcast, the live stream, the Wildwoods Beekeeping chat, however you would like to put it. We already have a nice little crowd, 9 folks in here so far, and it will grow as we kind of get going here. And I guess we'll go ahead and give some shout outs real quick before we get into today's topic, which, as you can see on the title, why some beekeepers don't get along. So we're basically going to be kind of comparing topics. Each topic could be its own video, because I've actually really probably these topics I've already done a lot of these topics, these debates, but it's just kind of all packed in a live stream talking about each one and why beekeepers have these debates. So I think it's gonna be a really fun topic for tonight. It's a topic, but kind of combining a bigger picture. So hey, Keith Spillman from North Carolina, Half Tracks and Honeybees. Richard, Rick, we have Russell Amon, Mike, let's see, we have Eggstead Gardens 2655. Thanks for checking in. You actually, Eggstead Gardens is actually a member, so thank you for that too. I can kind of tell from my side. It tells me if you're a member or not. Pastor Larry and Miss Jan. Hallelujah Bee Farm. Loud and clear. Good to hear. All right, so I guess there's really nothing really else to talk about, to warm up. So as y'all usually know how these live streams go, I will be doing my presentation. Usually each week I do a presentation. So whenever I'm doing my presentations, I usually don't look at the chat, just to kind of keep my mind focused on the presentation, so I don't get sidetracked, because I do get sidetracked pretty easily, and I don't want to mess things up and make it not smooth. So it's just kind of for your benefit to make sure everything is kind of runs well, so I don't look at the chat. So don't think I'm trying to ignore your comments or anything like that. I'm just kind of looking at the presentation on a different window. So I'm going to pull up the presentation here. Let me get back here. This is not where it's supposed to start. Okay, here we go. So beekeeping debates. This is kind of like I said, why some beekeepers don't get along. So let's first start out with the biggest debate. that most beekeepers have, and that's treatment-free versus using mite treatments. I actually had a video recently kind of talking about this. Really wasn't recently. It was probably a couple months ago, but it's a good video. After this live stream, I'll try to link some of the videos I refer to in the description below so you can go check them out. I really do highly suggest you do that after this live stream is over. Also, by the way, make sure to click that thumbs up button. If you click that thumbs up button and share this live stream out on your social medias, it does help this video get out to more viewers. Hopefully, help some newer beginner beekeepers. This topic's really for everybody: beginners, intermediate, advanced. Natural beekeeping versus chemical intervention. So basically, as most folks know who's watching this live stream, this is probably what most beekeepers kind of debate this about whether you should use treatments or not. I use treatments. I don't overdo it though. I'm kind of moderate, kind of in the middle. I'm not really high, also not really low. Some beekeepers do more treatments, some beekeepers do less. I'm kind of center field, should you say. I'm at the 50-yard line. Using treatments is, chemicals, Apivar, Apigard, let's see what else, Formic Pro, chemical treatments. So most beekeepers who are using treatments use those chemicals. I personally use Apivar and, put Apivar in the colonies. And then treatment-free. And here's the thing, I guess you could say natural beekeeping because, you can still use certain treatments because they're more natural, organic treatments. Like oxalic acid is kind of, people will say, it's kind of more of a natural treatment, but that's really up for debate too. You can kind of decide for yourself. It's kind of personal preference. Everything in beekeeping is personal preference. It just depends on what beekeepers think. Again, personal preference. So a lot of times, if you're trying to treat for, mites, whether it be, without using chemicals, you can, do brood breaks. That's putting the queen in a cage, a clip-on cage that kind of connects to the wall of the frame, keeping her in a little area so she doesn't lay eggs. And the thought process behind that is to try to break up the reproduction of varroa mites because they like to go into the worker cells, and that's where they're highly at, and more so drone cells. That's why a lot of people will put drone comb. But we'll get to that in just a second because I don't want to get kind of unorganized here. So, then therefore, people usually do these brood breaks for about a week or two to try to disrupt the varroa mite reproduction because they like to reproduce in the cells of baby bees. So therefore, if you don't have baby bees being laid in the colony, that does set back your bees a little bit, but it setbacks the varroa mites even more in their reproduction. You can also do drone comb for to not use chemicals. You can put a drone comb in there because the mites prefer the drone comb rather, drone pupa, because those drone pupa are in the cells for about 3 days longer than the workers, so the mites have more time in the cells. So they prefer drones. So you can put some design comb, slip it in there. Most of the mites will go to the drone cells, and then you can take that out and freeze it, and you kill a good amount of mites. So anyway, this is a common debate between treatment-free versus mite treatments. Some people would say that brood breaks and drone comb and some other various methods without using chemicals is still treating for mites. So, you can say not treating whatsoever. You can do that. Not really for big scale beekeepers, because these commercial beekeepers, they cannot succeed without treating for varroa mites. It's just really going to collapse. It just really depends on what a beekeeper does. And really, I can't, this video is kind of trying to see which one of these debates is right. This is really not going to be doing that. It's just kind of comparing what each debate is, and both of these sides of the argument is valid and have their reasons. So I think it's just really personal preference and what you prefer as a beekeeper. And if you're a beginner, man, it's probably it's challenging to figure out what works for you. So you're trying to get an exact answer, and it's really hard to do that. Or at least for me, and probably a whole bunch of other beekeepers can say the same. All right, so this one, Langstroth hive versus the flow hive. This is one that actually, you know what? The last live stream, I was talking about hive styles. I was talking about the Langstroth hive, the Warrior hive, the flow hive, all of that, kind of comparing each hive. And this really goes good, kind of takes back from what we talked about in the last live stream 2 weeks ago into this one, because the Langstroth hive and the flow hive have a lot of different ways that you can use them. Traditional management versus modern convenience. We'll get to that in a second. Concerns about easy beekeeping marketing and experience level of new beekeepers, honey production cost and longevity. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm eating on my words. So let's start out with the Langstroth hive because we're kind of comparing these two hives, these styles. Kind of talked about it last week. Kind of go back off what I talked about in the previous live stream. But the Langstroth hive is basically, you have your bottom board, then you have your two deeps or a single deep, whatever your management looks like, single brood management, and then usually supers, an inner cover. Then you have your top cover. You kind of pretty much know what that's a traditional Langstroth hive. And the flow hive is pretty much the same thing, except for the difference of those flow supers. The flow supers pretty much have a little lever thing that that kind of opens up the comb and let it kind of flows down into a tube that kind of runs out of the box, and then you can put your jar under it and open it up. You pretty much just, you don't have to do anything. You just crank a crank, and then let the honey flow into the jar. It's pretty simple. So the pros for the Langstroth hive and the flow hive. For the flow hive, I guess it is easier to get honey, because traditionally you'd have to use an extractor, and of course none of us really, I think most beekeepers I've talked to, in my interviews, will say that they're one of their most things that they don't like about beekeeping is extraction. It's worth it, but it is, not the funnest thing about beekeeping. It is the first couple times, but then it kind of gets a little old, and the more you do it, it kind of doesn't it isn't as fun, but you still got to get a job done, and we always do that. So the flow hive, I really feel like the flow. I think what a lot of beginners do kind of misunderstand why I think the flow hive is out there. Easy beekeeping. A lot of people think that all you gotta do is crank, and then let the honey flow on out. And that's all you got to do. You don't have to check for mites, check your brood frames. You don't have to do anything, and all you have to do is let the honey flow out of the honey super. They call it the flow super. It kind of gives a precedent that you don't have to do anything, because that isn't true. The only difference, as we talked about last week, or the week before, should I say, the difference between these two hives is the flow super. And that's really the only difference. Because if you get a flow hive, beginners out there, if you're a beginner out here, let me say, if you get a flow hive, you still have to inspect them. You still have to do the same thing. It's not, when you get a flow hive, the only thing you're not going to have to do is, I guess, buy an extractor. But I honestly think that just getting your traditional setup is a little bit more cheaper than the flow hives, because look, the flow hives are usually about $1,000, around that, or sometimes even more. They're pretty expensive. And these bigger beekeepers can't order $1,000 hives. It's just impossible. I think Ian Stepler, he might be watching. I don't know. But he has about 1,000 colonies. I really don't know. It's around 1,000 colonies. Bob Binney has about 1,000 as well. So imagine these beekeepers, these bigger beekeepers, buying a flow hive $1,000 a hive. That's a crazy amount of money. It rounds up pretty quick. A lot of money. So these bigger beekeepers, they do it the traditional way because it's cheaper. And it's probably just pretty much cheaper just to get your extractors and uncapping knives and do it the traditional way. Much cheaper. The price is one of the biggest things between these two hives. And Langstroth hives, sometimes, they are, beekeeping in general has a pretty high price tag, but the flow hives have an even bigger one. So that's pretty much it about there. I prefer a Langstroth hive. I feel like, the flow hives are kind of expensive. The flow hives, all you gotta do is turn a key and watch the honey flow into your jar. Like I said, you're conventional. You just use a spinner, extractor, a knife. Need some extra space in the shed and lots of time. That's for sure. Extraction in the conventional way, you need some time to do it. So again, I prefer Langstroth hive, but it's just personal preference. It just depends on kind of what your goals are. If you're a beginner beekeeper and you just want to get 2 hives, I think the flow hive is kind of more affordable. But if you're kind of a bigger beekeeper, the Langstroth hives are going to be cheaper for you, and you'll find that you're going to make more profit off of it if you decide to sell honey. Sorry about that. Kind of took a little while on that. Here we go. This is pretty good kind of topic here. Plastic foundation versus wax foundation, or no foundation. So we're kind of talking about natural comb drawing, chemical contamination, concerns about that, durability and ease of use, and impact on brood patterns and drones. So first, excuse me, I apologize. So first, let's look at plastic foundation. Plastic foundation is durable. That's kind of what I use. Plastic foundation is what most beekeepers use. It's durable. It usually lasts for years, and it's easy to pop into frames and keep moving. Beekeepers who use plastic like that, it stays straight. It doesn't sag in the heat, and it also allows the bees to draw comb very quickly once it's coated with wax. So most beekeepers will coat it with wax. If you don't, then most likely they'll draw out burr comb. So you have to have wax on there. If not, like a wax coating, and then they can get it drawn out pretty quickly. Plastic foundation works. It also holds up pretty well in a extractor, because a foundationless frame, a lot of times it can tear off. I've had that problem. That's why in my supers, I don't usually extract foundationless frames. Always has a foundation. So therefore, you can spin faster without blowing out the comb. But now we can kind of talk about some of the downsides. Some beekeepers simply, prefer not to put plastic inside a hive. They sometimes they worry about chemical residue on the coating, or they say their bees don't draw it out as willingly compared to pure wax or even foundationless frame. That's just an empty frame. And in colder climates, sometimes the bees can be slow to start working it unless the flow is pretty strong. And that is true as well. But either way, you do need a good flow for the bees to draw out comb, period. You have to have a decent flow. I've experienced that during the dearth of this year. Throughout the dearth, and they with no nectar flow, they did not draw out any comb. They didn't do anything except they did produce their brood, but they didn't draw out any comb. But once we got into the fall flow, they started to draw out the comb pretty fast, and it was a big turnaround. Next is the wax foundation. This another classic option. Plastic foundation is also a classic option. People who prefer wax say it's the most natural material you can put inside a hive. Bees accept it easily, and it smells and feels right to them because it's natural. Wax foundation lets the bees build quickly, while still giving them a guide so the comb stays straight. On the downside, wax is fragile. It can warp, sag, or get chewed. It can get chewed through. It doesn't always hold up well under heavy extraction, and because commercial wax can contain pesticide residues from wax recycling, some beekeepers don't want to take that risk. It also has to sometimes be replaced more often. And then we have foundationless frames. And this is one foundationless frame, so that means no foundation in the frame. I like foundationless frame. Not in supers. I do not put foundationless, super frames if I'm going to extract them. If I'm not going to extract them, I'll put them in there and I'll cut the comb out, and I can use it for comb honey. And that's what I usually use that for, or let them eat that honey through winter. But if I'm going to extract it in a extractor, I don't want to use the foundationless frames. But what I use the foundationless frames a lot for is in the brood area. I use it a lot. I usually take the foundation out and let them put it in there and let them draw it out themselves. I kind of want to explain how I usually do each year, and this is kind of my recipe that I've been doing for a while, and it works. What I'll do is, especially whenever I'm doing my splits, I have 5 frames of bees. I'll mismatch the frames with empty foundationless frames, put them in there, and then they draw them out very quickly because, they're in between frames that have bees on it. And I usually find in a decent flow, a good flow, a great flow, even a, somewhat okay flow, they'll draw it out pretty quickly because it's mismatched. And that's how I like to do it. I don't do it whenever it's cold. It has to be warm. That's why I usually do that in spring, not in really cold weather, because you're kind of dividing the brood area. And eventually, they'll kind of move more to the center once you get into summer, fall, into winter. That's kind of my process. Foundationless frames, plastic foundation, wax foundation. Most people probably wonder what's the best. Again, here, it's really no right answer. Not many things in beekeeping. Maybe a couple, but not many things in beekeeping has a right answer. It's just multiple options, and these options are great depending on kind of what your goals are and what you prefer. Your preference on what you want to do is really what kind of, it's what goes into your decision to, do what you do, use foundationless frame or foundation, wax foundation, plastic foundation. All right. So we're going to talk about the leave them alone method, or beekeeping versus active management. So, you have a lot of people out there, who don't really like to mess with their colonies often, and I understand them. And always, one thing also you got to do is just, respect every beekeeper's opinions. If they have another opinion they like to do. This video is not going to be, the way to say it. I mean, it's not really trying to fault a side or anything, fault these arguments or anything. It's just kind of comparing each argument, not really a right or wrong way to keep bees. For most topics, there's not really a right or wrong answer. So, minimal interference versus proactive inspections, stress on colonies versus missing early problems, different philosophies on stewardship. So, I guess we'll start out with the leave them alone approach, which a lot of beekeepers do approach with that method, that approach. Beekeepers who follow this philosophy believe that bees know exactly what to do, and that human interference often causes more harm than good. They want to let the colony live as naturally as possible, with limited inspections, minimal disturbance, and sometimes zero mite treatments. The argument is that bees survived for millions of years without us, and the more we step back, the more we allow natural selection to build stronger genetics. But the downside in this approach can lead to missed problems like mites, queen failure, brood diseases, or starvation that could have been prevented with early intervention. It's a hands-off method, and while it works for some beekeepers, it does come with higher colony loss risks, especially in areas with heavy mite pressure. So some beekeepers it works, some beekeepers it don't. Some beekeepers it doesn't. If you're wondering what I do, I always manage my colonies. I don't leave them alone, but I don't over manage them. I don't over stress them. I'm at the 50-yard line. So, now we'll kind of talk about the active management, managing your colonies. These beekeepers believe that, that's including me, that if we are putting bees in boxes and keeping them in managed environments, then we have a responsibility to monitor and help them. This means doing regular inspections, checking for mites, watching brood patterns, verifying queen performance, preventing swarms, and stepping in when the colony needs help. The benefit here is that problems are caught early. Colonies often stay stronger, survive winter better, and produce more honey. But some people do say that too much management can stress the bees. Constant inspections break up brood nests, release hive scent, and can create unnecessary disruption, which is true. So the way you minimize that is just not overdoing your inspections. And we've kind of talked about it before. Be intentional. If you're intentional and proactive, combine. I think that's the best way you can approach this. So you can kind of take some of these both kind of together. Make sure you manage your colonies. Just don't over inspect your bees, because that can stress your colony and can kind of disrupt them, because if you're inspecting them all the time, they're not really going to be able to get a whole lot done with you doing that. So I mean, it's just that's kind of my opinion on it. Local queens versus commercial queens. This is actually a really fun one to talk about. This is one I kind of want to talk about the most. So genetics adapted to your area, production ability, mite resistance and survivability, and consistency versus diversity. So I think the best way to start is kind of looking at local queens. Beekeepers who prefer locally raised queens believe that queens bred in your region are better adapted to your climate, your forage, and the disease pressures your bees face, which is my take on it. I love local queens much better than commercial queens. That's my opinion. Local queens tend to come from survivor stock in your area, colonies that prove themselves through real world conditions. This often means better winter survival, better mite tolerance, and bees that simply fit the environment they're living in, which is really, really important. If you're a local beekeeper, you really want local queens. That's really important. But sometimes these queens can be harder to find if you're wanting to buy a queen. The supply is limited. The genetics can sometimes be inconsistent, and the quality depends heavily on the skill of the local breeder if you're buying from a breeder. But if you're just, locally raising your own queens, I really think just let the bees, if you're trying to replace a queen, I mean, what I've usually done is I really don't buy queens no more. I just let the bees raise their own queen in that area, and you have your own genetics, your local genetics. That's what I do. Some beekeepers do buy local queens, and there's a whole bunch of local queens probably in your area. Beekeepers who, and they'll still work, in your area, because they're still in your local area. But I think if you just raise your own queens, let them raise their own queens, or if you graft, I think that's the best way. Absolutely, I think that's the best way if you're replacing queens, or any other scenario you may be in. Commercial queens. These are the ones you find at Man Lake. These are ones that are all over, that you can buy online. Commercial queens come from large-scale queen producers who breed thousands of queens each season. These queens are easy to order, arrive usually pretty quickly, and are usually very affordable. But right now, I don't know if affordable. They are affordable, but they actually recently. I think there was something I forgot what it was about, but I actually went on Man Lake and one queen. I think it might have been a late season queen that kind of goes into effect. But $50 for a queen, it is kind of expensive, but not too bad. It's still decently affordable. But I prefer raising my own queens. Commercial breeders often select for traits like high honey production, calm temper, and fast spring buildup. For beekeepers with lots of hives or those who want predictable traits, commercial queens usually offer consistency and convenience. The downside in commercial queens may not be adapted to your Pacific region, like we just talked about earlier. A queen bred in a warm climate might struggle in a cold one. Some commercial operations also use repeated grafting from a small number of queen mothers, which can reduce genetic diversity. And while the quality is usually good, large producers sometimes prioritize quantity over selective survival traits. So this one right here, I honestly prefer local queens, whether it be you buy a queen or a local queen, or even better yet, let the bees raise their own queen, or you graft and make your own local queens. I that's my opinion on that. I absolutely think that the local queens are better, more adapted to your region. You might be up north or you might be down south, wherever it may be. Both can hold up true. This is one, a lot of beekeepers talk about, feeding bees versus not feeding them, or, slash letting them forage naturally. Sugar syrup versus honey only philosophy, emergency feeding versus routine feeding, and impact on resilience. So most beekeepers feed. I feed usually. Actually, during fall, I really didn't feed because we had a really good goldenrod flow. I checked my bees today, and they're still have a whole bunch of the goldenrod honey. I mean, I was pretty surprised with how that flow went. So I'm still good, but I am going to put some emergency feed on them very, very soon, and I'll kind of talk about what's going on in my area later. Let's start about, whenever you're feeding your bees. Most beekeepers who are managing colonies, including me, feed their bees. Some don't. Beekeepers who decide to feed their colonies, whether it's sugar syrup, pollen patties, or fondant, believe that feeding give the bees the support they need during critical times. This includes early spring buildup, which I do a lot too. Try to build the bees up. It just really depends on what they look like. Some colonies don't get fed. In my apiary, some do. It just depends on the scenario at the time. In spring, this time I really didn't feed. This includes early spring buildup, summer dearths, late fall preparation for winter, or any time a colony is stressed during winter and low on resources. Feeding can help prevent starvation, boost brood production, which is a big thing for me, brood production, and help colonies survive tough conditions. So there's that. Feeding bees. I usually feed my bees. I want to kind of get the queen stimulated to lay eggs, especially early in spring. And if you feed some sugar syrup 1-to-1, you can even do 1 cup sugar, 3 cups water. Very, very light sugar syrup, because nectar, the natural nectar they get from flowers, is probably it's not 1-to-1 the ratio. So now we can kind of talk about, I mean, this is just kind of natural beekeeping. A lot of beekeepers, more hands-off beekeepers. I don't know. You let me know if you're a hands-off beekeeper, what your management styles are. I'm curious on that. I like to hear from other beekeepers and hear their opinions. Beekeepers on this side believe that bees should rely on natural nectar and natural pollen sources as much as possible. The argument for them is that natural forage leads to healthier bees, stronger immune systems, better nutrition, and more sustainable beekeeping overall. These beekeepers, often say that if a colony can't survive on the forage available in the area, it may not be well suited for that region's conditions. The challenge, however, is that even strong colonies can run into trouble in areas with nectar dearths, unpredictable weather, or harsh seasonal patterns. Letting bees fend for themselves can lead to starvation if beekeepers misjudge the flow, and in certain climates, natural forage alone may not be enough to keep colonies strong year-round. Swarm prevention. This is a big one. A lot of beekeepers talk about. If you should, prevent swarms or let them swarm naturally. Both have some, good stuff. Excuse me, real quick. So let's start out with swarm prevention. Beekeepers who focus on preventing swarms, believing that swarming, reduces honey production. It can breaks up the colony and can lead to lost bees if a swarm leaves and isn't captured. To prevent swarms, beekeepers monitor the hive for queen cells, perform splits, add space, or even sometimes, I usually don't, requeen the colony. Preventing swarms can maximize honey harvest and keep colonies strong throughout the season. The downside, however, is constant manipulation to stop swarming can sometimes, not all the time, stress the bees, require more labor. It does take some time, and it is labor intensive. I mean, out there, lifting boxes and making splits. I actually did that twice, and it's really ain't really that hard. I mean, not really that bad. And sometimes interfere with natural colony behavior. There's that. Now we can look at letting the bees swarm naturally. So some beekeepers believe that swarming is a healthy, natural process that strengthens the bee population. When bees swarm, the colony reproduces naturally, new queens get a chance to take over, and genetics can improve through natural selection. This approach aligns closely with natural or treatment-free beekeeping philosophies. The challenge, however, are clear. Swarms can be lost, and if they leave, you might lose a significant portion of your workforce and the honey production. Additionally, swarming can be a nuisance for neighbors if it happens to be in a populated area, and capturing swarms require experience and quick action. So I want to kind of, my opinion on it is, honestly, I mean, you hear a lot of beekeepers out there who mention that, they let their bees swarm, and sometimes I accidentally lose my swarms. I never fret about it if I don't catch or prevent a swarm. I try my best to prevent a swarm, but if I can, I don't stress over it at all, because if you lose a swarm, it is kind of treating for mites, because you're not going to be having a queen in that colony because they're going to be requeening themselves. So that's kind of a brood break, kind of a natural brood break. So sometimes if you lose a swarm, it's kind of a natural brood break, because they ain't going to have brood in there for about 2 weeks. And as we talked about earlier, brood breaks about 2 weeks, 1 week. I think that's all for the swarming topic. If I was going to say something else concerning swarming, but that's about it. But so we can now go to hive inspections, weekly versus minimal. So kind of minimizing your inspections, maybe kind of trying to take stress off the bees. We kind of talked about that a little bit earlier, kind of touched on it, but we're going to talk about it a little bit more. Weekly versus minimal, catching problems early, stress on bees, philosophy versus practically. So let's start out with the weekly inspections, which most of us beekeepers usually do, but also depends on what time of the year it is. I ain't inspecting my bees much right now, and really shouldn't, because it's pretty much late fall, not really a whole lot to do, nothing to check. Every once in a while you do want to when it's warm weather, but just not as regularly as you usually do in spring. Beekeepers who inspect frequently say that regular checks allow them to catch problems, these problems early, like mite infestations, diseases, queen issues, or overcrowding. Weekly inspections help prevent swarming, monitor honey stores, and ensure the colony is healthy and growing properly. Frequent inspections can sometimes stress the bees, break up the brood nest, disturb pheromone signals, and sometimes slow colony development. Actually, I touched on that earlier. There's also more work for the beekeeper, which can be a challenge for hobbyists with multiple hives. Because look, I don't know how some of these commercial beekeepers do it. 13 colonies for me right now. I still have 13 colonies, and man, it's a little challenge, having that many colonies. I don't know how these commercial beekeepers do it, but respect to them. Now let's look at minimal inspections. Some beekeepers prefer to check their hives only occasionally, maybe once a month, or even less during stable periods. This approach reduces stress on the bees, allows them to maintain their natural colony rhythm, and often aligns with natural or treatment-free philosophies. Minimal inspections are essentially appealing for experienced beekeepers who can read subluate signs from the outside of the hive or from brief inspections, which is what I sometimes do, especially later in the year, especially in summer. In spring, I do inspect a little bit more often. The risk is that problems can go unnoticed until they become serious. Mite mites, queen failure, diseases, or dwindling stores might not be caught in time, which could result in colony loss. Minimal inspections require experience and careful observation to ensure the colonies remain healthy. I know a lot of beekeepers down here who do minimal inspections, and they do it fine since they're more experienced. I don't usually don't do weekly. I also don't do usually don't do once a month. It depends on what time of the year it is. Usually in spring I do every 2 weeks. That's kind of pretty good because you're able to check. That's within the time frame for swarming. I inspect one day and then 2 weeks later, usually should catch a late queen cells. If my previous inspection of the hive, I didn't see any queen cells or any problems there. Usually in spring, 2 weeks. Then when you get into summer, I don't like to inspect much in summer. You have a dearth, at least down here. Don't want to risk robbing. This year I didn't have any robbing problems. I was happy about it. We didn't have any robbing problems. I just don't like to inspect much in summer, and in fall I haven't really been out of my colonies much. Really, I haven't really done a full inspection for about 3 weeks now. Just right now, time of the year, not really a whole lot to do. Nothing to go out and check. There's no more drones. There's not, if they lose a queen, unfortunately, gonna have to let them go. There's nothing I can do right now. So it's kind of boring right now for me as a beekeeper, not really inspecting much. I plan to maybe inspect some, but I actually did go out there today. I just wanted to peek some lids, kind of look at them, see what they're doing. And they're looking good. They're still looking the same as they did the last time I checked them. So, okay, there you go. That's pretty much the main beekeeping debates out there. I mean, I don't know if I missed any. Maybe I did. There's a lot out there that beekeepers talk about. I mean, these are why we have these live streams, is talk about different opinions, different topics and stuff. So kind of wanted to break them down for you newer beginners or you advanced beekeepers, intermediate beekeepers. Thank you for watching this presentation. We are not done yet, though, so don't go anywhere. We have 16 folks in here tonight. If y'all would, make sure to click that thumbs up button. Make sure to click that thumbs up button because it helps my live stream out. All right, so I did not really go through during this whole live stream, I didn't see any of y'all's comments because I was kind of looking at my presentation. So I'm going to go back and look and see if I missed anybody, go through anything and see kind of who's in here. So if y'all are not in here, if I missed you, I apologize. We have Dennis Sherrill. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for checking in. If y'all have any questions, feel free to put them in there. I will answer them if y'all have any. What else do we got? I always have a horrible time trying to store drawn out combs, so I feel like I have to build them up every year. I get you, storing the drawn out comb. I can say the same thing too. I envy all the pros that have everything down. Pat on the back, yeah. I don't know how they do it, but they're experienced. They're more experienced than me. Better than how I keep bees. I'll say that. They are really experienced, more experienced than me. I've kept bees for about 8 years, much more experience, and they do a great job of what they do. Flower Street Farm Bees, Brian, thanks for checking. Hello from Florida. Thanks for checking in. I think Brian is from Colorado. I'm guessing Brian's out there just kind of visiting Florida, to my guess. And I think Brian and Todd is doing their own live stream at Thursday night. That's pretty cool as well. On Thursday night, excuse me. Mutts rule. Yep, they do. I'm starting my North American Honeybee Expo shopping tonight. See, hey Philip, RTX Honeybees from Texas. Thanks for checking in. Have Keith. We have 19 folks in here. Make sure to click that thumbs up button. I appreciate that. If you have any questions in there, put them in there. Tim and Hannah, Gun on Bees. I think they actually just checked in. Thanks for checking in. We have Gary, RT23 Bees. Gary, thanks for checking in tonight. I appreciate you. Xdead Gardens, a $5 donation. I appreciate you very much. Great job as always. Thank you. I could not do it without you, without you guys. So I appreciate it. Is a debate about bees called a bee date. I think that is what they're called. Hey, you know what? I should have thought about that. That would have been a very fun thumbnail. Maybe when I'm done with this, I'll change it. Yeah, I think it is called a bee debate. Yeah. Pastor Larry, thanks for checking in. Are you all, I think it's for everybody, are you all still using sugar water right now or fondant? I'm actually really not feeding anything right now. I'm pretty much done with sugar syrup. Right now, if I'm going to feed anything here soon, I've already been thinking about it. I'm going to pretty soon start feeding fondant for the extra food. Now, on some of my colonies, they have supers, so I probably won't have to feed them. They can have their supers on there because I left some supers on. RBs still aren't taking any kind of feed right now. I get you. I'm not feeding my colonies right now. I plan to soon, but not in a huge rush. But here, I do want to do this though. I kind of want to look at the temperatures. They're kind of talking about we might get another cold snap when we, get more closer to Thanksgiving, which down here, I would expect that most likely. So I don't have my thing on the screen that I usually have, but I'm going to kind of go through my temperatures. Y'all can let me know what's going on in y'all's area. Today was 80 degrees, a very nice warm day. Bees were flying. I went out to the bee yard, opened up some lids just to kind of make sure everybody's doing okay, and they are. Everybody's doing well. Tomorrow actually is 80. Wednesday is 82. Thursday is 83, Friday is 79, Saturday is 77, pretty nice on Saturday, Sunday 74, Monday 72, Tuesday 72, and Wednesday, these are our highs, by the way. Wednesday is 69, so you can see we're getting kind of more cooler temperatures. So, and I'm going to soon start feeding some fondant. Eventually, but it's not really cold enough, too. That's why I haven't really been feeding anything. RTRX honeybees, fill up sugar water. If anything, it was mid-80s today. Yep. If I were to feed anything right now, I would feed sugar syrup because it's warm enough to do so. I usually don't like to feed sugar syrup whenever the lows are getting down into the freezing temperatures, 32, which recently they did get down to the freezing temperatures. But when it's warm, that they're going to take sugar syrup, and that's what I'll usually feed. And honestly, right now, I'm gonna say kind of why I'm not really feeding a whole lot right now. It just hasn't really been consistent. We're not really in winter temperatures yet down here. It's just been, we had that one little cold snap before. I really didn't do anything during that cold snap. It's just because I didn't want to overdo myself thinking, oh no, go overboard on prepping because we're not yet deep into winter. My bees are all good right now. They have enough. They honestly have enough stores to get through a couple the next month. So once we get into December is when I'm going to really start putting on some fondant. I actually have some Havla fondant. I'm going to put that on whenever it gets colder. Jealous. I love snow, but I know some areas get slammed, so I'm sure plowing isn't fun. Yeah, we don't really get much snow, but this year, in January, we got some snow. It was about 5 inches, I think 6 inches high. I mean, it was thick snow. I mean, it's the most snow we've had in a while. Exit Gardens, I'm in North Carolina and have fondant in all my hives as emergency food. I do the same thing. I always call it emergency food, just in case they run out. So, not really anything much else to talk about around here. Nothing really going on. Just kind of hanging in there, chilling out, But I will say, last week I didn't do my live stream. I've just been kind of inconsistent. I do apologize there. Just, kind of taking a break from YouTube. I actually haven't really been watching a whole lot of YouTube live streams. Just been kind of missing them. Just kind of taking a little break from YouTube just for a little while. So I'm going to try to get back to that. For the channel, though, I do plan to do more stuff soon, some more videos and stuff, and not really, actually, not really doing a whole lot of vlog videos because there's nothing really to do. Nope. Long-term forecast is for more snow, lower temperatures for longer periods in the middle of the country. I did hear something. People were talking about that this year might be down in the south and in the middle, maybe not down south, but more in the middle of the United States. It might be a little bit more colder, longer periods of temperatures. I mean, you can take some things, not good, but honestly, if it's consistent, I mean, it's kind of easier to keep bees in consistent temperature to me, whether it be up and down, because then you got bees, breaking cluster all the time and flying and burning food. We have the last of our sugar water on now here in South Carolina. Have a lot of fondant going on around first week in December. I'm thinking the same thing too. Is really kind of my plan. I think everybody kind of has the same mindset, I would think. On cool days, too cool to fly, the gals will hit the feeders, but once it is cold and they have to stay in a cluster, then it is time to pull them. Yep. When it gets cold, I don't leave on any, sugar syrup or anything like that. It's just a little bit too cold and can cause condensation, moisture, unwanted moisture. I currently have fondant, but wasn't sure if it was too early with the temps going up and down. Down here, it's been fluctuating a lot. We had that one cold snap, and then it got back to warmer temperatures. I knew that's the way it's going to be down here in Alabama. Classic Alabama temperatures, southern temperatures. I'm sure you're in Virginia, so kind of probably works out the same way with fluctuating temperatures. So I've been kind of holding off a little bit. I know my bees have enough stores in there to last for a good while. So I'm gonna wait a little bit and then put on some fondant, and probably in the first or second week of December, once it gets a little bit colder. Little still early. Grayson, any beekeeping goals for next year? Expand. Probably gonna do the same thing I did this year. Try to triple, maybe. Depends. As long as I can get my colonies through winter, nice and strong, everything goes good, and then I'm gonna split. I usually do double deeps, 5-frame splits. One colony to 4. I should be able to triple if I want to. Don't want to get too big to the point where I can't manage them, though. I don't want to overdo it, because right now with 13 colonies, it can be kind of a little difficult to check all the colonies. It just takes some time. So another goal next year is going to be spending more time in the bee yard, I would say, making sure everything's good, because this year it's just been kind of hard with the 13 colonies to keep up. And look, every year this year the bees were just running away from me. There's multiple times where I lost swarms and I still was able to get triple with all the swarms I lost and swarms I caught. I'm looking forward to spring. I think hopefully it's gonna be a good year next year. This year was a pretty good year. We had a good flow, a decent flow. Not like one of the best ever or anything, but better than some of the ones we've had in the past. Expand. Maybe get some type of honey harvest. I don't know. Since some of y'all might have not been in my last live stream, but I was starting a honey extraction. Going to extract some honey, about 3 supers. Maybe it was 4 supers. I think it was 4 supers, 3 supers. Whatever. I mean, not a whole lot of honey, but a decent amount. Right whenever I got the first super done, got through the first super, and my extractor, it tore up. The middle of it, there's a coupling on there that broke, so just couldn't finish it up. But it's fine. What I basically did. It was simple, easy, very easy to do. Is I just put the supers back on the colonies it came from and called it a day. Put up everything, the extractor, put it back everywhere where I found it, and I still have the honey. I really didn't get much honey from that one super. I maybe got about 1 gallon, 2 gallons. No, I wouldn't say 2 gallons. About 1 gallon. Still okay. Still got a little harvest for personal use, and maybe a little bit to sell. A little bit. Let's see here. Oh, when do you stop going into hives? At what temperature? People can put their preference in there, but usually don't inspect. You don't want to pull out brood frames whenever it gets below 65 degrees. Individual frames, you don't want to do that because you have the risk of chilling your brood. You definitely don't want that to happen. So make sure that the temperatures are 60, 65 degrees above, and you're good to go. You can pull out your frames and do that. You can still, even if it's cold temperature, you can still pop up your lid, kind of peek in there, perfectly fine. You just don't want to pull up individual frames because then you could risk chilling brood. Basically what Gary said. I stopped 2 months ago. Why would you go, and what would you do if you find a problem? I think Philip, you're meaning you stopped inspections, right? Because if you're saying that, that's kind of I think you probably responded to somebody else. But because right now there's really not a whole lot if you have a problem. I haven't really been inspecting my colonies. I've not been inspecting individual frames. I just feel like there's no need to. There's nothing really for me to do. If there's a problem in there, there's really no point, of inspecting the frames. Possibility of, I was thinking the same thing Gary just said. No point in risking the possibility of killing your queen this time of the year and cannot fix it. Basically, I was about to say the same thing. There's, you risk killing your queen. There's really not a whole lot to do going into your colonies. At least right now, not really a whole lot to do. I mean, if you come up with a problem, there's really not a whole lot you can do. If you lose a queen, I actually lost a queen around in December. I can't do nothing in December with a queen. You mean, you can't. There's nothing you can really do to if this super late. If there's a problem in there, if because look, natural things happen. A lot of times the queens die. They don't make it through winter. I've had that problem before. They don't make it, and sometimes there's just nothing you can do about it. Because once you get into winter, you can expand and replace those colonies. And look, I don't. Whenever I lose a colony, I might lose one this year. If I lose them, I still have some drawn comb. I still have stuff I can. Still not good. I do not want to lose a colony, but I can still salvage the whatever it left, that colony. Still salvage it. Reindeer's Bees. Thanks for checking in, Rainer. I would be thinking about why you need to be in your colonies. In May, I would do one final inspection around the 21st of September. Yeah. Last time I did an inspection was probably in September too. I really haven't been in my colonies in about a month, really. I haven't been in them for a while. Yeah, it makes sense. I think the warm temps is why I was thinking you have to check. You don't have to check, this time of the year. Whenever you have warm temperatures, even if you have warm temperatures over 65 degrees, I mean, unless if you have there's really no reason to go into your colonies. If you think that they're low on food, just put some fondant in there, some resource, your emergency feed. Might as well be safe than sorry. You don't have to just check. Usually in spring, if you're checking for stuff, brood patterns, food stores, getting ready for winter. When you're getting into this time of the year, you can just go ahead and, even if they are all filled up, go ahead and put some emergency feed in there because, nothing to lose really, Right. If you can't fix a problem, then you are in there for your sake, not the bees. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that good topic we're kind of talking about, getting into your colonies this time of the year. Yeah, because around this time of the year, there's really nothing you can do, with a problem. Absolutely, right there, food check is hefty, not opening. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and end this live stream. I appreciate y'all so much for watching. And this topic was good, and we kind of ended off on a pretty good topic. Some good stuff talked about tonight. A good conversation. I thought the flow was good, and I appreciate y'all kind of chatting with the chat box. Y'all were amazing tonight, so thank y'all so much for watching. I appreciate y'all. Make sure when y'all check out, make sure y'all click that thumbs up button and subscribe, share it out if you want to. I appreciate y'all. And I guess we'll see y'all next time. Good night, everyone.